I hear a lot of chatter out there in the audience. Was that beautiful or what? I know you're all saying the same thing. The dresses. Oh my God, I want all of them. So please join me in welcoming the costume designer for Priscilla, Stacey Battat, producer Youree Henley, and our moderator tonight, film critic Perry Nemiroff.
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Wherever you guys are most comfortable. Congratulations. Can we give them another round of applause, please? Yeah.
Thank you.
It is a cool theater. Cool theater, cool crowd. Hopefully my questions hit that same level right now. You're getting my first question because you've been with this project since the very beginning. When Sofia first told you that she wants to put her focus on this movie, what did you think was going to be the greatest challenge for bringing it to screen? And ultimately, was that the biggest challenge, or did something else catch you by surprise?
Whoa. What was the biggest challenge, and was it?
What did you think?
What
and
did I
then what
think?
was?
You know, I think it was, we had been working on another project for about 2 years, and that didn't come together. And then we ended up, this became the next thing that we were going to do. And I read it and I loved it, but I was worried that we weren't going to have enough money to make it. And just to be totally honest. And so as we were trying to put it together, that was becoming more and more evident. And then we started to kind of figure out where we were going to shoot it. And of course, the film takes place in Memphis, and we thought, oh, well, maybe we'll go to Graceland and shoot it there. And then we normally shoot everything on location. And then we were going to shoot it in Los Angeles, and then we kind of went down that road. And then somehow we ended up in Toronto, you know? And I feel like it was the greatest thing that could have happened, because we got out there and we were way outside of our comfort zone, and a lot of really great things happened. And we ended up shooting a lot of it on things that we built, and we worked with a lot of people, like cinematographer and Stacey were people we had all worked together, but we had a new production designer, which was a big deal, and she was from Toronto, and there were just things that happened along the way that we knew were going to be challenging, but then they ended up actually becoming assets to us, and they ended up challenging us in a way that I think made the film better.
A+ production designer you found there too.
Tamara was really, really great, is really, really great. We were very lucky to have her, and we also didn't really have a lot of time. I mean, I think we changed course with production designer, 2 weeks after that person was supposed to start, So we came out and had a very accelerated schedule, and we couldn't really push much further because we were going to start to get into weather. And it was just, there was a lot of tension, leading up to it. But then in this really weird way, it was all the things that I was really nervous about. I think it was actually, and Sofia has said this, like the best film shoot that she had been on, in the sense that a lot of the time you work on something and you can have a really great time making the movie, and the movie kind of isn't great necessarily. And then sometimes you have a really horrible experience making the movie, but then the movie turns out really good. And I think that there's this misconception that sometimes that tension is what makes the movie good, and it's actually not. And we had a really wonderful time, right? Making it.
We had a good time.
We had a good time, right? It was good.
It was stressful, but it was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as far as movies go, I like making them, though. It was good, right?
It was good. We had a good time.
Clearly I had a good time, And so, but then we also, I think, made a good movie. So it was, I don't know if that really answers your question, but okay, good.
I think you answered my question and then some.
Oh, okay.
I also heard you were having a good time because you were playing pickleball.
That's like a whole other Q&A. That'll be like a whole other thing, yeah.
Part 2, just the pickleball process of making Priscilla.
Yeah.
A question for both of you now, because you've both collaborated with Sofia a number of times, and you'll learn this soon now, because I like compound questions. So 2-parter here. What is something about your process when working with her that has stayed the same from film to film to film? But then what is a unique challenge that Priscilla posed that demanded you do something different?
Yeah. Hit it.
I think something that we always do when we make a movie is Sophia creates a mood board, and it's not a mood board that is, full of images of what she thinks the set looks like or the costumes look like. It's a mood board that really encompasses like the tone and the feeling of the movie. And from there, she is kind of, she's collaborative. Like she lets her department heads kind of bring to her what it is that they believe is, reflective of the script and that mood in terms of whatever it is that they do. So like whatever the production design should be based on that mood and tone and feel and her script, and whatever the costume should be based on that mood and tone and script. And I think that has always remained the same. And, she's so great at creating that and kind of has a way of bringing everybody together to kind of bring that vision. And I don't know what was different. What was different is like it was challenging. We didn't have the time that we needed. Maybe we had a 30-day shoot, and I'm speaking to costumes specifically. We had a 30-day shoot, 120 costumes just for Kaylee. I think like there wasn't maybe as much attention given to each thing. Like I think we didn't talk about each thing kind of so much. There was a little bit of just trust maybe involved, and more trust than normal. Not that she's not trusting. I don't mean that. I just mean like I don't know. Just
Well, I think she was also really trusting with you because she has a
so many
relationship.
things,
Yeah, and I
yes.
think there were she was getting pulled in a lot of different directions. But I feel like also it was we had to make the movie very scrappy, and so, we didn't have enough time or money, so we were just constantly like rushing, to get through it. And then it was kind of a relief that we could exhale once we started shooting, leading up to it, it was, it was a lot. And there were,
we didn't exhale till the last day of shooting.
yeah, I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I think also on costumes, it was really, we gave you I think your budget was like $2 and you had, like
it was
no
$3.
time. It was $250, and then you had no time, and it was incredible. I remember going to, it was cool that we were able to make the movie. A lot of the stuff we shot on stage, and it was nice I had never made a movie like this where it was sort of my fantasy of like making a movie the way they might have been made on backlots in like the 30s or something, where it was like everything was in one place and you could walk from the costume department to the production designer to the stage where they were building it, and then back to your office, and then over to casting. And I remember going through your department, and it was so insane how many racks of clothes you had just for extras. It was just, it felt like hundreds of racks of stuff, and it was just all of the attention to detail that you somehow were able to pull off. I'm saying this.
Thanks, Youree.
It was really impressive.
I'll lean into that a little.
Yeah.
What was your favorite, I guess, hero costume? Something that is front and center that we see in all its glory, but then also to touch on that detail. What's maybe a background costume or a little something you put that people might not notice, but it was important to you and it's fleshing out the world?
Well, I'll start with Priscilla's outfit that she waves goodbye in, because it took us a long time to understand what was on her waistline. And I remember looking at the real photo with our tailor, Ahmed, who was amazing all the time. And like every few days we would talk about like, what is it? It looks like a cinnamon bun. Like, what do you think it is? And then one day, like, I was like, it's a belt. And then we like kind of understood, like we saw like that it like kind of looped through something. And then it was such an exciting day. I don't think you ever see the belt thing on it, but we were very excited. It felt like a really gratifying moment to the costume department when we understood.
You could figure out what it was when you saw what it was.
Yeah,
that's cool.
we took us a long time because it's like obscured and it does kind of look like it's just like a poof or a rosette or a cinnamon bun or something on the side of the dress.
You also spend a lot of time looking at reference photos.
Oh,
I had all of our
tons.
offices were filled with,
Reference
obviously
photos.
Elvis was photographed a lot, and Priscilla was always sort of right just to like somewhere in the frame, and so we were always able to
No, but
kind of.
there's not a lot of photos of her
I
from
know.
the time that she lived in Graceland. Like there's
Yeah.
very few photos of her in the early 60s.
Yeah, and so the stuff that you could find though, you
Yeah.
had up, and you would just sit there and and
We'd
study
look
it
at
for a
it,
long
yeah,
time.
yeah.
I'm always curious to hear about bringing someone's true story to screen and finding the right balance between authenticity but also creative license. So can you give me an example of something that was very important to get accurate, but then also, you know, maybe a hole that you had to fill in and get creative with?
Sure. I think when you think of Elvis, there's so many iconic Elvis looks, and we can say like I really wanted to make sure that her baby dress and their wedding and that family photo shoot with him in the like blue thing, the blue suit, really, that was really authentic. But then at the same time, we're telling a story, and it was also really important to me that he seem like her boyfriend and someone that she felt vulnerable, like was vulnerable towards her and vulnerable in her company. So when we see them in their private lives, I really just thought of like, who is this guy that's her partner and her, man in bed reading with his reading glasses that you never saw Elvis in. And I wanted him to feel cozy and like that you always kind of saw him the way she maybe saw him, and she didn't see him as this iconic rock star. She saw him as her boyfriend.
There's such a cool evolution of fashion that's twofold in this movie, between just general fashion through the years, but also how it pertains to how the characters themselves evolve. Was there any specific stage of that journey that you were most excited to design for?
Well, I think, when you think of somebody like Kaylee, she went from 14 to 27 in the film. So a big part of her fashion journey was just kind of understanding what was the period, and also how to use the things that were prevalent in the period to age and youngify her. I don't know if youngify is a word, make her feel more childish. So in the early part of the movie, in the late 50s, I used a lot of crinolines to kind of make her skirt puffy, even though the real Priscilla kind of wore both slimmer skirts and puffier skirts, but we only used puffy skirts so that silhouette remained childish. And then as time, in the movie, passed and she got older, we changed the color palette. The color palette got bolder, the skirts got slimmer. So it did kind of help to, give her age. Obviously, hair and makeup also was a huge part in that, and I don't want to take credit for their amazing work, but it was a big
Collaboration.
It was a collaboration, yes.
All incredible work that comes together seamlessly because you have the right leader.
Yes.
Yeah.
Youree, I wanted to go back to the scrappiness because I heard you say that at New York Film Festival, and I think it's an important point to emphasize because many out there might think this is a Sofia Coppola directed movie. You get all the resources you want. Can you give us an example of a resource or a thing that people might assume that a movie she's making can get, but you didn't have it and you had to find a creative solution to make it work with what you did have?
That's really good. I'm trying to think. There were so many. I mean, there was. One thing was that we had always shot all of our films on film, and because it was a period piece, you would just automatically think that we would shoot this on film, and we had planned on it, but it was a really big expense, and our cinematographer was our default setting was to shoot it on film. It was a huge cost, difference in shooting it digitally. But if we did figure out a way to shoot it digitally, it needed to be something that we felt good about. And so there was a lot of testing and a lot of things that we finally could get to a recipe that we felt good about. That's something that is kind of film geeky, but is something that comes to mind. That I think a lot of people were surprised when I told them that we shot it digitally, because everybody kind of knew that she loved film, and certainly the projects I had done with her were always on film. And then I think just the amount of time, like on every front, it felt like we were really you start out with a project and it's kind of the process is already kind of insane. You read a script, and then through your experience, you determine like how much time you need to shoot the movie. And so at first we kind of felt like, oh well, we probably could shoot this in like 40 days, and then 40 days turns very quickly into like 35 days. And then you go, well, we're never going to ever shoot for less than 35 days. It has to be 35 days. And then, of course, just a few weeks later, you're like, well, what about 32 days? And then by the time you start, You're then shooting it for 30 days and you figure it out. Somehow, though, it doesn't always happen, but on this particular one, it all kind of worked out. There was nothing that, we didn't use really, but then there was nothing also that when we got in the edit, we were like, oh man, what were we doing? We really should have kept that X, whatever that would be. So I think people think probably with Sofia that she has, all of the resources that you would need, and with that, all of the time and all the other things that come along with, the name. But the truth was, we were just not. It was very difficult to raise money, for this movie, and thankfully we were able to, and it's been nice that people are going to theaters to see it. That's been really exciting and wonderful.
We don't really talk about that part of the process, the raising of the money very often.
It's awful. Why would we talk about it?
Well, because it's vital to bring any story to
that is
screen.
true.
It's so important.
That's true,
Can you maybe give us an example of something that you did to pitch to financiers and convince them that like her vision for this story was something to back? How does one get money for something like this?
Well, thankfully, Sofia has a body of work that you can point to. So that's very, very helpful. Thankfully, there's plenty of people who are interested in raising their hand to be part of that. This film, making films independently, kind of fall into a certain range, and this was outside of that range just because of the time period and the depth of what we had to make for to do the film justice. So it was tricky. One thing I know that Sofia was interested in doing, you did mention pickleball. We thought about doing a tournament at one point where there was a lot of interest around Jacob Elordi, and we thought if we could do like a fundraiser where you play pickleball with Jacob Elordi, that we might get like an extra day of shooting or something, like this was a real thing. Like we were really, during pre-production, figuring out a way to do that. Like that's how strapped it was. Jacob was down too. He was like, I'll do it, like whatever. He was a wonderful partner in that way. But those were real conversations because we just were looking at the schedule and we were like, this is a schedule where everything has to go right. There can be no mistakes because there's no room to move. And that's just not a great place to be, especially every film I had made with Sofia, it was the opposite of that. The first film we did together, Somewhere, I think we shot that in 25 days, but it was a 40-page script, so it was just a very different thing. This one was like, what did you say, 120 costume changes?
Yeah, she had 120 costume changes.
120 costume changes.
I think the script was only like 90 pages.
Yeah, and for that, we're like, okay, so there's going to be times where she's changing clothes in the course of the day more than we're actually shooting her. Like that's bonkers.
We did. Like
and we
there
did do
was
that.
hair and makeup.
Yeah.
Like the hair and makeup changes probably were
It was a lot.
longer than the shoot. Like we probably did because she went. Like we had to. Work within the confines of weather and sets and whatever. So sometimes she was 14, as she likes to say, in the morning and pregnant in the afternoon.
That happened all the time.
Yeah.
I have a couple of follow-up questions.
Okay.
One of them is a pickleball question. I swear it's the last one I'm going to ask.
You can take that one.
Who was the best?
Oh, who was the best?
Yeah.
The first AD.
Yeah.
Andrew.
Andrew was,
For
right?
sure. Or Simone.
He's very athletic.
Simone was very
If he
good.
was here right now, it would be obvious. He's very handsome.
He's a tennis player.
And he's very fit, and he is a great pickleball player. And Sofia was smart enough to also
have him be your partner. Yeah.
So they won. So I would say Sofia was the best player.
Okay.
In the sense that she was with Andrew, and they won.
In the sense that she picked the best partner.
Exactly. Part of that is,
I think Simone, we're discrediting Simone. Remember when Simone was the smasher? She did.
I'm just going to say about pickleball, I thought it was super lame. I was not into pickleball. I thought it was also like, how are you going to shoot a movie that you already don't have enough time for and play pickleball at the same time? It's completely counterintuitive. It makes absolutely no sense. I was walking through the stage one day and I was like, I don't understand what they're doing over here. I don't remember a tennis scene happening in our movie. And then somebody was like, oh, Sofia had they're making a pickleball court over in the corner. And I was like, is she insane? Like we don't have enough time to do the thing. Anyways, we ended up playing a lot of pickleball in between setups. I know it sounds wild, but instead of being on your cell phone or instead of grazing craft service, everybody who worked on the movie, whether you were a driver or an actor or you worked in the
I
makeup
don't think
department.
the actors ever had time.
But they sometimes they would sit back, but they would watch.
They would watch.
I feel like it really, really brought everybody together.
It brought everybody
right?
together.
It was
I think
really
when
nice.
when like the last week when I had a little more free time and I kind of was like, what are people doing over there? It looks fun.
She never got to leave the wardrobe chair.
But I did at the
clearly.
last
That
week,
was-
and I had so much fun playing. And then now I came back here, and I actually do play pickleball now, and I'm really into it.
That's incredible.
But I didn't know how to play when we were in Canada. I just thought it was like get the ball in the lines. Now I understand what the
But it brought
real
everybody
sport
together, right? In
If
like a
we
really
can call it a
wonderful way.
sport.
And I think it actually made us work more efficiently. I know that sounds nuts, but it really was nice, like to have some recreation, something
It
to
was
clear your
nice.
head and get your blood pumping. It was really nice and productive, and it challenged all of my ideas around like productivity and everything else.
Makes all the sense in the world. I feel like now you're going to hear about a whole bunch of sets out there because folks watch this Q&A and they're going to have pickleball on set
Oh
now.
my God, we did actually
I
have
think
it.
it would be great.
Toronto, a lot of people shoot there. So there's a show called What We Do in the Shadows. Do you guys know that show?
Very good show.
It's a good show, right? So we would have a tournament, Priscilla against What We Do in the Shadows.
When
Those
did we
guys
do
are really
that?
good. That was on weekends when we went out to the thing. I'm so sorry you
I
weren't
was
there.
busy. I don't know. I had to
Anyways,
work on
those-
weekends.
They're phenomenal pickleball players, though. They're really good.
You
So
gotta
they
give
beat
them
Nandor's an
Pasadena.
incredible
Priscilla.
pickleball player.
They
What's
win.
that?
They win.
I mean, they kinda. You didn't hear from me, but that was it.
I
Sorry.
really didn't think pickleball would be such a hot topic
I know,
of
I'm sorry.
conversation,
No more
but I
pickleball.
love it. I had a more serious follow-up question to what you were talking about before. For both of you, can you pinpoint a time during filming where a challenge popped up, you had to find a way to pivot, and the creative solution you came up with actually made something better in the movie?
That's like the whole movie. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So, do you want to go?
I feel like this is something I was just talking about, but I don't know if it's Actually, I want you to start. I don't.
Really?
Yeah, you start.
We had this schedule that was very like within an inch of its life. Like I said, like nothing could go wrong. And about a week into shooting or 2 weeks in, we were constantly moving around, and we lost a really big anchor location that had like 5 sets in it. And so it wasn't just about finding a place that worked for one thing, it was about finding a place that worked for 5 things. And when you're out scouting, you spend weeks and weeks and weeks looking at things. So you don't just sort of randomly pick something. You don't really have a lot of choices. And somehow it was this one place that we didn't see, even though we thought we had seen everything. And it was so much better, and it worked. And we had so many sets there, and everything from like the hospital to the weird like karate studio, like all these things that were these random sets, we were able to build into this place. That's something that comes to mind. That was like really not great while it was happening, and then somehow it turned out even better. Or building Graceland now seems ludicrous that we would do it any other way, but shooting that stuff on stage was so helpful. And again, we had never really shot on stage that much. Sofia hadn't, and so she kind of went into it being like, can we just make sure we don't shoot anything on stage? And then when we were done, it was like, why don't we shoot everything on stage? I mean, it was just a real 180 because it was such a great experience of really being able to be exacting of what it is that we're creating, and then also having the flexibility to come back to things. And there's a reason why people have been doing that for like 100 years, and we just figured it out in Toronto. Yeah.
What you got for us, Stacey?
So when we made the school uniforms, originally we talked about them being baby blue, and every time I would like look to find one that you could buy, they were like baby blue, but they had a lot of navy stripes in them. Like they just felt really dark. And I had contacted Immaculate Conception High School, and they sent me the original skirt and uniform, and it was baby blue, but maybe it was a little darker than baby blue, but I couldn't find a reasonably priced baby blue plaid fabric. So I found that sage green fabric, and it was $3 a yard. And I convinced Sofia that it was going to be great in sage green. And I think it really was, because you're not used to seeing that kind of sage green schoolgirl uniform. And it kind of like felt otherworldly, but it was a happy accident in a way. Like, that fabric was affordable. And I was like, we can buy this fabric. We can't buy that fabric.
But it's also a thing too, on like when you have limited resources, that's something like you could rent a school uniform. Like, there's a lot of them out there, but that's where you really, I think, it went beyond, because you were just not going to do that. It would have made your life easier. It would have made so much things, but you were like, no, it has to be this. And
it had to be pastel.
You were relentless, I think, though, in your making it as good as it is. And so
Thank you, Youree.
I still think it's incredible that somehow you pulled that off.
Well, the fabric was only $3 a yard.
I love $3 a yard too. I mean,
I have to highlight the actors here. Obviously, Kaylee and Jacob, very popular, rising stars. They're going to have many, many more lead roles in their future. What is something about collaborating with them that you're excited for more producers and more costume designers to get to experience when they work with them in the future?
They were just such angels in the fitting room. I feel like they brought both their physical presence, which I think somebody needs, the costume designer needs in order to make the clothes, but they also were like collaborative in their thoughts and their like during those fittings, I feel like we really built the foundation of the characters together and would talk about like what they're going through in certain times and scenes and whatever. And I think that was just amazing to have that from both of them. They were really wonderful, collaborative actors. So,
yeah, they were very smart, very thoughtful, and you kind of, I don't know, this is going to sound horrible, but I think you see Jacob and you, either through some of the roles that he's played, but you might have an understanding of what you think he's going to be like. And he's just, he's so much, there's so much more depth there. And I found him I loved their chemistry together, off screen too. They would really support each other. And sometimes, I mean, they were in every scene, but there were often times where we were shooting Kaylee without Jacob, and Jacob would be there. Sometimes he didn't, he might have one scene in the morning. He would spend the rest of the day there to be there for her off camera, or to be part of the process, And I thought that was really generous, and I hope that that's something that may or may not continue as he continues on, but I'd like to think it would. He's also a really gifted photographer, and I like shooting photos too, so we kind of, I really like Jacob. He's not just really talented, but he's also seemingly he's a solid person. And Kaylee's incredible. Kaylee's amazing as a human. She's and incredibly talented, but she was really great to work with.
The two of them are something special. Yeah. You see it on the screen in this, and just everything they do for that matter, and hearing that they're supportive scene partners too, even when maybe they don't have to be, that's really something special.
They were both great, like just incredibly lovely and never complain. Like I feel like to have to be in every scene and so much hair and makeup and like a million costume fittings, and like I'm like not sure any of them ever ate lunch. Like
we had days of shooting stills too for all of the magazines and things. It was just
never
hundreds.
Complained. They were just such
costumes.
Angels. They were angels.
It was cool actually. One thing I would say is we had a lot of stress of trying to figure out like, what are we going to do? How are we going to figure this out? What do we, and all of that anxiety got us up to the camera test. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, right, we're shooting actors, and let's just forget about all this and focus on that for a minute. And I remember watching Kaylee and Jacob, at first Kaylee, come onto screen. And I remember feeling like when I saw her, and it happened to Sofia, and it happened to Philippe, the cinematographer, we all kind of figured out at the same time that it really didn't matter. Like we could shoot half of the script that we had, but as long as we were capturing this thing, this like special thing that Kaylee has and that Jacob has, we all of a sudden, it kind of like the stress sort of melted away, because we felt like as long as we capture this thing, we'll be in good shape, And I think it really kind of set us off on a nice path. And from that point on, that's when the movie started to really gel and come together.
That's such a beautiful
And
answer.
also, we did all that on the same day, the camera test and all, and right? I feel like
Yeah.
I've blocked it out, but now that you said that, I was like, wait, that was all one day.
That was all one day.
All
Yeah.
the stills, and these poor actors would go from like being shot in a still, then changing over to like a look for the movie.
Yeah, it was wild. It was wild. I'm
Some
still
people
not
Camera
quite sure
tested
how
by
we did
footage.
it.
I'm not sure how we
but-
did it either.
Somehow it happened. Yeah.
The proof is on the screen. You
Yeah.
did it and you did it well. I have to let you go soon. I like ending on this a lot because I am a big believer that nobody in this industry says good job to themselves nearly enough. We say it to
that's
each
so
other during
cool.
award season a lot, which is beautiful, and I love that. But no one says it to themselves. So can you each pinpoint something you accomplished in Priscilla that you know you'll be able to look back on and say to yourself, damn, I'm proud of what I did there?
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Really?
Yeah.
All right. Do you know what yours is?
I do actually.
Okay. Oh my God, that's amazing. Do it.
You know what? I've had a really bad experience on a set pre-COVID, like kind of during COVID, and it shattered my confidence a tiny bit, and also just like made me really like I had a little bit of PTSD. Like I wasn't sure about going back into the fire, and I feel like I regained my confidence on Priscilla.
That's so great.
It's true. I'll tell you about it.
Yeah. I can't believe I didn't know that.
No, it was I had a
Yeah.
really bad experience. I mean, I was always going to go back to work. I just feel like
Yeah.
I was very like, I'm not working with you. You're not nice. I'm not working
Yeah.
with you. I don't
think
want to do that.
I have a similar one, not to bite your moment, but I do have a similar one. I think COVID did this probably a lot to everybody, but for me it was I had been working on a movie before that, and the movie got shut down, and so it was a bummer. It was awful because we were about halfway through shooting and we had to stop, and then this thing came up, but I had been working with Sofia for 2 years on this other massive TV project that we were going to do. And so at a certain point, there was a lot of pressure where it was like, look, Sofia and I had a big conversation around it. We couldn't figure out a way financially to do this TV project. And there were some other issues as well. But this time around, Sofia was like, look, I don't really care. Like, we got to figure it out because, we can't just keep pricing ourselves. Like, I want to make something. It's been 2 years. We have to make it. So I felt like, all right, well, we can hold hands as we jump out of this airplane together with no parachute. We'll like make the parachute as we're flying, down. And I feel like the good job to me would be that somehow the parachute was made. Somehow we were able to land softly and still make a good movie. And I feel like that's big and kind of ambiguous, but that's how big it did feel big. And so I think that was a good job, Youree. Good
I
job.
think so too, Youree.
Thank you. Good job, Stacey.
Thank you.
Good job to you both, and thank you for this movie. It is absolutely wonderful,
Aw.
beautiful on every level, and thank you for sharing some of your experience with us tonight.
Thank you, and good job to you. Thank you. And to all of you.
Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thanks for coming. Seriously.